You might be familiar with the idiomatic expression, "so that happened." Usually this is the end of a particular story, something that's strange happened. But the question is always, what is that? That is the story. Now in Latin, we can do something very similar in which we're going to express that with an ut clause followed by the subjunctive. Right? So we might rewrite that to say, it happened that I fell off a horse. This sentence, or this clause, that I fell off the horse, is actually the subject of the sentence. It is the it, right? So these noun clauses, this clause here, this ut plus subjunctive, can serve as the subject of a sentence, and we'll also find that it can serve as the object of a sentence. So if I say, I made it so that he fell off the horse, this clause again, that he fell off the horse, is the object of the it. It is the it. So in Latin, you've already you have some experience with purpose clauses and result clauses. This functions very much like a result clause. So let's take a look at some examples. First, let's take a look at examples of this ut clause, this noun clause, working as the object of a verb of making or doing. So we're going to have a separate subject, and then the ut clause is going to be the object. So, facio ut hoc intelligas. So, I make it, right? I make sure. And here's our ut clause. Here's what it is that I'm making sure. I make sure that you, here's our subjunctive, and remember we're going to follow the sequence of tenses. So, present subjunctive, because we've got a present tense main verb. I make sure that you understand this. Right, so this is the object of this verb. Or committit ut nemo rei publicae noceat. He makes it, he brings it about. What does he bring about? Ut nemo rei publicae noceat. This is the object. He brings it about that no one, so just like a purpose clause, or a result clause rather, just like a result clause, we're going to use a negative and not nay, that no one harms the Republic. Present subjunctive, because our main verb is in the primary tense, is a primary tense. Let's take a look at some past tense. Caesar brought it about, efficiebat, imperfect, that, there's our object. What is it that Caesar brought about? That the soldiers were not afraid. Imperfect subjunctive, because we are in secondary sequence. Or again, the Romans brought it about, perficerunt, perfect. There's our clause, our object clause, that the colonies, the coloniae, were safe. So we use the imperfect subjunctive because we're in secondary sequence. All right, so these ut clauses, and they will all begin with ut, never nay. Ut plus a negative if you want, ut nemo, ut non, plus the subjunctive. They can serve as the object of verbs of making or doing, bringing about. They can also be the subject of impersonal verbs. This is our it happens that. And this kind of construction is actually much more common, I think, in Latin than it is in English. So let's look at some examples. It happens, accidit. What happens? Ut discipuli deficitis cantur. That students grow tired. Present subjunctive, because we've got a present tense main verb. sequitur. It follows. What follows? It follows that ut nemo hoc intellegat. It happens, or it follows that no one understands this. Intellegat, imperfect, present subjunctive, because our main verb is in a primary tense. And again, we're not going to use a ne, we're going to use ut plus a negative, nemo. Qui fit, and this is from Horace. This is, I've stolen this from Horace's first satire. Qui fit, how comes it, and I guess this should be a question, how comes it that no one lives contentedly? Qui fit, so fit, it happens, it comes about. How comes it that no one lives contentedly? So, what? Ut nemo contentus vivat. Again, present subjunctive because our verb is in a primary tense. We can do the same in a past tense, in secondary sequence. So, it turned out. What turned out? Evenit. Ut Romani Gallos vincerunt. There's what turned out. That the Romans conquered the Gauls. Imperfect subjunctive because our main verb is perfect tense. So it turned out that the Romans conquered the Gauls. One that's slightly odd is you can just have a sentence erat. It was. What was? Or it was the fact. Ut. It was the fact that the Germans were the bravest, the strongest. So essent imperfect subjunctive because our verb is in the imperfect. It's in a secondary tense. So it happened that the Germans were the strongest. And finally, another really pretty common Roman concern is the idea of mos, custom. So erat mos Romanorum. It was the custom of the Romans. What was the custom of the Romans? Ut liberti, that freedmen, non senatores fierent, that freedmen did not become senators. So here's our subjunctive because our main verb is in a secondary tense. So remember, noun clauses can either be a subject of a impersonal, it happened, it follows, or they can be the subject of an impersonal, or they can be the object, the direct object, of a verb of making. Oftentimes facio, or a compound of facio. They will always start with ut, never ne, ut, and then they'll have a negative, ut known, and then they'll have the subjunctive.